Well, good morning. I just woke up just now, so it's 3:15 a.m. in the morning. I think I went to bed about 2 a.m., so I didn't get very much sleep. Just before I went to bed, I did a upgrade. Windows has a new upgrade. Windows 11 Insider Preview, build 22635.3066, the beta channel. The build number that I don't usually give that number. I give the other number. And you can see it here. It's KB5034209 to the beta channel. It says, reminder, all Windows Insiders in the beta channel will now be on the same build via enabled package. For Windows Insiders in the beta channel who want to be the first to get features gradually rolled out to you, you can turn on the toggle shown in the image below to get the latest updates as they are available via Settings Windows Updates. Over time, we will increase this rollout of features to everyone with the toggle turned on. Should you keep this toggle turned off, any new features will gradually be rolled out to your device over time once they are ready. So I'll put the link. I'll put this link below. So let's see. Fixes gradually being rolled out. Onto the beta channel with toggle on. Input. Fixed a tab tip exec crash which could impact the ability to input text. Text Manager fixes an issue where dragging the task manager without Windows without work if your mouse was on the search box. Navigator fixed a crash where you tried to turn natural voices for I should have stayed in bed. Narrator in settings. Voice access fixed an issue which was causing voice access to crash when signing up for new languages. So far, I don't think any of these things are going to be affecting me. Let's see. New features for everyone in the beta channel. USB 80 gigabytes per second. We are excited to announce support for the latest generation USB standard, USB 80 GPS. In this build of Windows, USB 80 USB 80 GBPS support will initially launch on select devices based on the Intel Core 14 Generation HX series mobile processors, such as the new Razer Blade 18. I think I'd like to look that up. Where's my Fisher space pen here? I'm going to write that down. I'm wondering if that's something, that... Of course, I've got an old computer. Let's see, that's... okay. Razer. Now, I've got a Razer Blade 18. I've got a Razer USB. In fact, that's what I'm using. fact, that's what I'm using right now. That's the camera I'm using. I'm not sure if that's. I'll come back to I'll come back to that. And I'll just put if I find a link for that, I'll put the link below. Let's see, the first major update of USB 4 standard and increases performance of 80 gigabytes per second from 40 gigabytes per second. It enables the next generation of high performance displays, storage, and connectivity. It is fully backwards compatible with paraphernalia build for older generations of USB and Thunderbolt, and works alongside all the USB Type-C features. Okay. So, I'm going to just, there'll be a link to this and you can read this entire thing, and then you can do maybe some searching if something in there interests you. So now I'll leave that at the top, and so I'll jump over here to, okay, this is, some internet stuff. I've been getting, I guess I started watching a few, and I watched a few in the past of these young children, or I guess we should say young adults or something. There was a guy in the UK, married, and both him and his wife were, they're in the UK, and they, where's my Coke? I need some Coke here. There it is, hidden by the microphone. He was, I guess, a national or maybe international ballroom dancer, and his wife, I think, was in the same type of position. And they have a large house there, and they have a room or rooms big enough that a whole bunch of people can, be dancing. And he teaches dancing. And now, when I watched it, was I think all young people, children, and younger, no, not younger than younger, but you know what I mean. And maybe that's why I've been getting updated. Again, here is, now it's not him, but this is somebody. So this is some of the things I get. What's interesting? Well, I watched the guy in England with the website, and like he didn't just show him teaching kids. It was the whole thing, communicating with the family and the problems that they have, and let's see, like one problem is getting enough boys to, there's more girls wanting to do that kind of dancing than there are, boys their age and size that enters into it. And I'm not going to play the music. I'd get, it doesn't really matter, but I'd get a hit, which really doesn't matter in a way. But I don't want the hits. So what came up was that some of these dancing situations, it's brother and sister, but they have a problem, getting enough boys, and also like some of these are couples, you know, well, not couples, like, you know, not, you know, but the, you know, the boy will outgrow the girl, and there she has had, you know, a good, you know, maybe it's brother and sister, but maybe the boy has grown too big for her, you know. So, you know, she needs to find, you know, the parents need to find, and of course this guy who, you know, owns the thing, that's just one of the little chores that he had to do, was try to find, you know, and he'd have to talk to the family and say, you know, the boy, you know, they has grown, you know, too big, and we need to find, you know, a boy. I'm not sure he uses a boy. Maybe I don't know you know, but so. But let's see if I can find some other from. Okay, how in the heck do I? Okay, how do I get the heck back to? Loop? Nope, 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 that's not it. Let's see if. No. What's this? Play on TV, that's not it. Scroll. Okay. Let's see if this takes me someplace. You know, when I started watching these I think quite a few years ago, and they started popping up again. One thing, and I'm 83 years of age. No, wait, I'm 82. I'll be 83 in March. But one thing I thought about, you know, watching this, thinking, you know, when I was a young kid or whatever, and, you know, would have liked to have a girlfriend or even a friend. You know, both my parents were alcoholics. You know, they didn't beat me. In fact, I'd never got a spanking in my life from my parents, and I pretty much was, in a way, I was sort of the adult in the family, you know. My father would, in the beginning, just fall asleep. He'd have a bunch of beers, fall asleep on the couch. My mother would sit and drink a highball and call, starting with A, Anderson, and work, you know, and she'd be calling, like, Howard was our family, you know, name. And by the time she got to H's, it was probably, you know, 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning, and she was working her way through every night as soon as she got home from work. And so, okay, let me see if I can do something with my, I need to, let me use the escape key or something here. There we go. Okay, I just need to use the escape key. So, you know, in my old age, I was thinking, you know, if I had only, you know, taken up, you know, dancing, I would have got to dance with girls. Maybe one of those girls would have liked me. But too late. There was something else about there was a bunch of things about watching that husband and wife team, you know, going through everything. That, you know, they would attend, you know, these things. Now, the father and mother were award-winning, you know, I don't really understand, what, I can't remember what skill levels and that type of stuff that they had, but so that was one thing I thought about. The only thing is, like I went to Catholic schools, grade school and high school, and the high school I went to was a military academy, and I have a feeling probably, you know, see, I didn't have a lot of friends. I mean, you have some at school. Well, I didn't have a lot at school too, because I didn't take part in anything other than the military. I mean, I didn't take part because military was considered part of the physical training that you needed. So I didn't have to take part in a sport event, any kind of a sports thing. But anyway, I would probably, if I was going to a military high school, and if I were dancing, I was going to show you some of the. That was it. Let's see. Anyway, that's I think I would have had. I was really way underweight, by the way, because my mother really didn't, I mean, I'm talking about when I was old enough to, I ate TV dinners. That's when the TV dinners weren't in the tinfoil or they weren't in stainless steel or anything, for the, and I drank Coke. Actually, I drank Pepsi. That was my thing, drinking Pepsi, not drinking water, by the way. But there was food there, but I ate TV dinners, and that's when you had to cook them in an oven. You couldn't, well, there wasn't any microwaves, and then later on, my father got where he was drinking, not just beer or whatever, but I didn't invite friends over, and I didn't go over to friends' houses very often, and because I didn't want, if I went over to these other kids' houses, well, they'd expect to pop into my place, and my father would be passed out on the living room couch, and my mother would be making phone calls, and so I didn't, but I think if I had taken, now I did other stuff as a kid. I was in civil defense, the Ground Observer Corps, and a whole bunch of other things. Shortwave radio. I spent, listening to radio broadcasts from around the world and doing all kinds of things, putting out a publication, monthly publication, just doing a lot of stuff. But I didn't have friends really coming to the house. And so I think if I had taken up, and I'm not coordinated well, never have been. So I don't think I would have, lasted if I'd have signed up for, I don't think I could have done it. Also with hearing loss, that might have affected, that. Maybe not, because it's just ranges, and I had hearing loss started when I was in first grade, and never got treated. Can't blame my parents. They didn't do anything, but on the other hand, when I, got 18 or whatever, and started working and making good money and working union jobs and everything that I did, I never did anything about the hearing, which progressively got worse. I never did anything about it either. So let's see if I can get back to, I think I can get back to, let's see, this is This is Windows announcing. Whoops, okay, you don't see that. And here we go. I'm going to put the link, for that. Okay. Okay, I already answered this email, so I'm going to go ahead and delete it'll take out the email thing. Okay. So, what else? I used to, not all the time, it just sort of depended on what kind of a mood I was in. When my parents would pass out, I would dump out their whiskey or, Seagram 7 or whatever. Later on, my father he was still in the Boilermakers, union, and he became a union official there at the Boilermakers Union, Local 83, I think, is what it was. I eventually became a Boilermaker too, and had it. I have very few things that are really saved. Well, I have a whole bunch of computer stuff saved, and I have a whole bunch of pictures, but I've been sending those gradually to LaDonna, my oldest daughter. But I got sidetracked. Oh, what was it? Okay, that went out of my mind. I have all kinds of notebooks and things like, and I have too many of them. I really need to, maybe use, I'm signed up for Office, have been forever. Hardly ever use it, but signed up for it. But I sure could organize things, in a better, way. So I think it seems like when I'm talking, I'm bringing up things that show that I'm not very smart. So anyway, I would pour out in them the alcohol. I never. Oh, by the way, I've never. I don't drink at all. Never have, and don't smoke. Now you might say I did smoke, because I think maybe I smoked for. I could have at any time, drank some beer or something. Rather, my parents, I'm sure, would have thought, hey, he's growing into a man or something. And but I. There again, something of. Anyway, I poured out, there, and there's a few times my parents said, well, what happened to the such and such? And I said, I would say, it would depend. If I was really, unhappy with the situation, I'd just say I poured it out. And they never said, they never said, like my father never said, you what the fuck, you'd poured, and stuff. That didn't happen. I didn't. But I drank. Let's see, I drank Pepsi, and had TV dinners. That's about what I lived on, I think. Well, candy bars. But I got married. I lived with my parents until I was 26. I got married at age 26. Darlene was 18. And so, she was doing the grocery buying and the cooking, And, so I would remind her to get, Pepsi for me. And she was drinking Coke. And then after a while I thought, well, I just told her, I'm going to switch, I'm going to switch to Coke. Because it didn't make sense, her having to go, whatever she was buying at the time, 2-liter bottles or cans or whatever it was. So I went to Coke also, just to make it easier on her. And also, I mentioned that, you know, what I think I mentioned just a while ago, that I went to De La Salle Military Academy. That I was, you know, way underweight. Uh, in fact, after I went to the military, you know, went to De La Salle Military Academy because I wanted to go in the Army and be a career, you know, do 20 years in the Army. Seemed like a good idea to me. But when I graduated from high school, I went down and, you know, said I want to enlist. I mentioned this before in some past videos, that I didn't know that the thing with the recruiters, that was like a contract, or that you could, you know, work a deal out. Because when I went the second time to recruiting, anyway, the first I went and they said, well, we need teletype repair people. And I said, and I was picturing going into, which I think would, I don't think it would have been a good idea really for me. But I thought at the time that, you know, but they said, oh, teletype repair. And I said, okay. And then they asked me all these questions and stuff. And I said, well, you know, have you had this, had that, all that kind of stuff. I said, no, I'm okay. I said, the only thing is I'm just a little bit underweight. And the guy pulled out his book there, the recruiter, and said, yes, you're definitely way underweight. We will not take you. And then a few years later, when the Selective Service sent out I got the notice that I needed to report for, you know, a physical. You know, there was 200 of us that showed up. And okay, out of 200, I was the skinniest person there, and by far. And there was one doctor assigned, you know, to this 200 of us, you know. And the doctor came through around these people. The reason I know there was 200 is we were all naked, and somebody with a magic marker, you know, marked 1, 2, 3, up to 200. So that's how I know there was 200. Anyway, the doctor came over, you know, going around in between the people, and came over to me, and he said, have you been in the hospital? I said, no. And he asked a couple more questions like that. No, you know, no. Okay. Then he went back. Then as we were going through the testing, there was some big guys there. Well, as we were going through the testing, the only ones I saw faint when they're, you know, having blood drawn or whatever was happening were the football player, or the big, you know, the big guys or whatever. And then two, when the doctor started going down the line, just looking at us, you know, he was, you know, and he was rejecting the, you know, football players, bad knee, bad this, that, and whatever. So, by the way, I had hearing loss, and I never even thought of that. You know, I didn't think of that. Well, I did in a way. I knew enough that when you were in a line, you know, when you came up to they had a door, and somebody on the other side would say a number, you know, like 9 or 6 or something. If you heard that, that was the hearing test. And so I was listening really careful, trying to zoom in on it, and I got it right. And so at the when all the testing was done, all the testing was done by noon. And out of the 200 people there was one person who couldn't give a urine specimen. Guess who? Out of 200. So I had to stay. All the 199 left. And I forget, it was several hours, you know. And finally I was telling them, the Union Station is right across the street. Could I just go over to the Union Station over there and get, you know, it would have been Pepsi at that time. Well, I wouldn't have said Pepsi. I'd have just, can I get a drink, you know? They said no. And then finally they said, okay. And so I went across the street, got a can of Pepsi, I'm sure, came back. and then after a little bit gave them their urine specimen. So then, this was a selective service, thing. And so then I got a notice that I was 1A and that I should report to, So I went and, they asked me a few, the recruiter asked a few questions. That's when it was said, okay, the only thing we have is teletype repair. And I said, well, okay, I'll take it. And I said, but I'm kind of pissed. And he said, what about? And I said, I came down right after high school and tried to enlist, and he said I was under, not, you, but, I was told I was under the minimum weight requirement. And he said, yeah, you do look thin. And he said, just a second. So he called the place where we did the physical, and I think, or I guess, that it was so unusual, must have been kind of unusual, because, he called, and he said, I've got somebody here who, appears to be, underweight or whatever, and they took the information, name, social security number, I guess, date of birth maybe, and then the person came back and said, oh yeah, we'll send a new card, 1Y, unfit for military service except for an emergency. And then with years and years going by, and with this Trump situation coming up, people were talking, that's before he got elected, we're talking about his background and his history, and talking about he had student deferments, and then he had deferments because of something with the feet or whatever, and so that kept him out. And then the news, were reporting more on, Trump before he was elected, and they talked about how he, when he was talking and whatever, that he said that he knew more about the military than the men who had served in the military. And he said some stuff like that. And then they talked about his history, and then his bone spurs. That was it, bone spurs that he had. And then they said, that he had 1Y. That's what I was classified in the, 1Y. And then they said that when, they were doing some discussions in the newspapers or something like that, that at such and such a date, I didn't know that. See, I got a card, and you were required to carry the card with you at all times. And women back then who were, let's see, I guess they weren't, I don't think they mentioned women having a card, but they mentioned, anyway, women were burning their bras as protest, with the hippies and that type of stuff against that. But anyway, it mentioned in the news that Donald Trump was, things that he had said, that he knew more than the military did because he went to a military high school. But he also went to, I think, a college that had ROTC in it, but he must not have, if he'd have finished it, he could have become an officer, but yeah, but I was glad actually when I went, and when I was when they told me that I was, or whatever the classification was, you were ready, they would take you. And of course, on that second time, on the first time too, I guess, but I'm really glad that I did not because what would have happened to me when on the second thing, I would have got a card that was at 1A, and if I'd have got that card, they would have loaded me up at some point on a bus or something and sent me to a camp for basic training. And then recently, in the last, 10 years, 20 years or whatever, I was reading, what is it, a message board that had questions. Was it quota? Was that it? Anyway, where people ask questions, and spent too much time every day doing that, because I really found it. I stumbled on it and read it every day, and I'd spend way too long because the questions were. I remember I stumbled across a site, and that was it. And the question was, if you're rich, do you have a special gold card, an actual gold card? And then another question was like, if you're really wealthy, does your secretary or does your somebody who does your stuff, do they have to use or does somebody that do it for them? And it was those kind of questions. And I can remember that at the beginning, but then after that, they were asking really interesting questions. And I actually eventually, after a few years, I answered, and I think I did a really good job on the questions some questions that I answered, maybe 10, questions or something like that. But let's see. So I don't know how many years ago. Well, it would be with Trump, when he was getting ready, whenever that was. They reported, the history of, and they said that on such and such a date, everybody who had a 1Y card, it was automatic, went to 4F, and I didn't know that until I read that. Sort of as I was growing up and things came up, I thought, well, I'm not a 4F, so, but I became a 4F because of, that's why I don't like Trump, I guess, because, anyway, but actually when I went for the election, or for the vote for, when Trump ran, I took, we don't have a car, so I took a cab over to the voting place, and it was in, was it in a school or some place like that? And I went in, and there was I went through the front door, and there were 2 rooms there, and one room that was dark, and maybe the door was a little bit closed or whatever. And then there was another room, and it had signs out there. Maybe I just didn't see the others, with the rules or something like that. And I didn't hear anything from the first door. And the lights were, I guess they weren't totally out. But I didn't hear anything, and nobody was, went to the second door, and so I went in, and I got in line, and I don't think right in the beginning that I really noticed that it was all Republicans there, It was, in that room. And so I went in, and the people were very nice there and everything. They said, okay, are you voting Democrat or Republican? Okay, so it must have been the primary or something like that. Because they would put you in a thing before the election, before the election, you would go and you would vote. If you were a Democrat or Republican, you would pick that, and then you'd be picking out the people. Well, now it would have been for that if you'd click the boxes for the people. Anyway, so the people in this room were, were Republicans. Anyway, anyway, they said, are you voting Democrat or Republican? And I said communist. And the guy, what? I said, I'm voting communist. I need a form for voting for the, whatever. And then this guy hollered over the other, not angry or anything, like, this guy says he's voting for, the Communist Party. And So then he just handed me a form, and it was a Republican, form. He just handed that to me, and I said, no, I need the Democratic one. And he said, what? I said, I need the Democratic one. And then I said, where are the Democrats voting? I'm not sure if he said, well, you need to go next door. And that's when I went next door. Okay, this went out, the Republican room, there was people milling around, there was lights and that kind of stuff. Then when I went next door to vote, or not to vote, but to pick, well, I guess you are voting. You're picking the person that you want to be the candidate of your party. And so I went next door, and there was hardly anybody there, and the place didn't look like it was, didn't look like it was occupied until I walked into it. And I thought they should have somebody, standing at the door, standing, because if there had been some, and at the other door also, they should have had somebody standing out. Maybe there was some reason that they, maybe there's a reason they just had it. They had a sign at the door. I don't think it said must have, though, so you'd know where to go. But that was my experience with that. Oh, I know how I got started on this little subject. So, we don't have a car. We can't afford a car. If we won a car on Let's Make a Deal or something like that, we wouldn't be able to afford it. If somebody gave us a car, we wouldn't be able to afford the gas, the insurance, and all that type of stuff. We're too poor for that. But anyway, so I took a cab. Was it a cab or was it an Uber? Can't remember now. Doesn't matter, I guess. But anyway, and it was a short trip over there, so I got in the car, and I said, I need to go to such and such, and I said, I had to vote over, and so then I said, have you voted yet, or something like that? I forget how it started, and he said, yes. He says, I'm voting for Donald Trump. And I said, that surprises me. I said, because he's made comments that he knows more about, he wasn't in the military, and he knows more about the military than the military men who have served. And he said, where did you hear that? And I said, I've heard it on CNN News, and I've read, it's been on, repeated, he's made those statements. And he said something like, I don't think so. And but then he said something, like, I think he's the best man, and I said, well, I don't think so. And anyway, he said he had voted already, for Trump, and then coming back, I took a cab back when I voted after voting. And I asked, I forget how I asked it, and he said, oh, I'm a Trump man, I'm a Trump man. I said, well, I voted for the Democratic, candidate or whatever. And that surprised me. That surprised me that with what Trump had said, the things that of course, after that, oh my God, he said, when he was elected, as president, the things that he said about the military and all kinds of stuff like that. I was really surprised. Now, I wasn't surprised. I knew that, the Republicans were going to vote for him, and I knew that, born-again Christians were, that's another thing, though, that, I wish I could remember that, because I sometimes I tell somebody, what was it? 2 Corinthians or something like that, and he got it wrong. I mean, and I'm a Catholic, or I was a Catholic, and the Catholic Church, that we have Bibles, but we don't read them a lot, and I mean it's when Mass, it's parts come up and that kind of stuff, and Trump, claimed to be religious, and yet. Then when they, whatever that uh, school, uh, Baptist school or whatever, it's Protestant, I guess, and they they have, it's a big, big. It's a college. They turn out ministers. They turn out other, other types of things or whatever, and that college uh, is very. They have very strict. If you go there, they have very strict rules, about sex or a whole bunch of stuff like that. Not pro-sex stuff. And but I remember reading on CNN or so, I'm not sure exactly where, that the school, and it's a big one, Protestant school, college, uh, they, they told their students, they went. I guess they went over the list again. You know, you will applaud, and you will do this, and everybody is required. You're required to go to this. This guy is coming. Trump is coming, and all of you have, or you're required to. My God. Yeah. And then he comes up with, and I mean, and I'm a Catholic, and Catholics don't really read the, well, I can't speak for all the Catholics. I'm not a Catholic anymore. I gave up on. I did not give up on the Catholic Church because of priests, abusing boys or something. I did. That's not the. It was already, that stuff had already started coming out, and that didn't. I mean, I think that's wrong, and I didn't approve of it. But what happened is, when Trump's term was going on, and after oh, I better get back to, okay, so for this, what, I wish I could remember it. It's, if you follow the news, you would, but I can't remember this Protestant, if you can call it Protestant, so anyway, all the students were required to be there and to applaud him and everything else. And even I knew when I heard what he, but of course I didn't go watch, that his thing or whatever, but it was on the news, that, and I forget what it was. It was something from the Bible, and I can't remember now what that was, Jeremiah 2 or something. I forget what it was. It wasn't that. I don't even know what that is. I'm making that up. But he said something, like number 2 something or something. You don't, that's not what you don't talk that way. You don't say the identity, where you can look in the Bible of such, number 2 something or whatever. He did. And then I did see that part, because the students there, all of them, and maybe, well, of course, as far as I can tell, they all laughed at him, I mean, it wasn't, so for the election, anyway, when I was doing the voting, for the election, I was surprised that the military, who got both of those guys, that took me, a guy that took me and a guy that took me for this back home or whatever, both of them were retired military, and they just loved Trump. I couldn't understand, could not understand that. But now for the election, I knew that the Protestants, the Baptists and those, I knew they were going to go for, for Trump. And they did enough that he got elected that first time. He didn't get elected the second time, no matter what he thinks, So, how did I get on this subject? I don't know. Oh, What I my son's getting kind of loud. It's 4 a.m. What I was what I was surprised about, I knew that, a whole bunch of Republicans, Baptists, that type of situation, I knew that they would not want to vote for the Democrat. They'd want to vote for the Republican because of, loving guns and everything else, But I did not think that Trump would be elected, for his first time. And, well, he was only elected once, but I thought, I knew it was close because, you see the news and the surveys and that type of stuff. But I thought, okay, the Republicans, and the Baptists and those, they're not going to vote for, Biden. So I didn't think that they, I thought they would just stay at home. They didn't want to vote for a communist. Didn't want to vote for a socialist, and didn't want to vote for somebody who thought that there should be some gun control, although the vast majority of Americans do want reasonable gun, they don't want guns banned. They don't want to be like Australia where they had a mass shooting down there. It was really bad, and the government said, okay, that's it, no guns. So I thought that it would be close, but I did not think that Trump would, win that first time. And and it was the Protestants and I guess a few other, whatever you'd group in there. I thought they would not vote for Trump, or maybe just stay at home and not vote for anybody. But I was wrong, That's what happened. And actually, statistics came out that the number of college educated, or maybe not, maybe they didn't get a 4-year degree or something, I don't know, but that young women voted, a lot of them, a higher number or whatever, that made a difference, and that probably made the difference for, Trump winning. They voted. That surprised me. So, anyway, this has been about an hour, and my son, I think, is getting louder. So, so I think I'll just bring this to a conclusion. Thank you very much for watching.